Hello, this is Soul with a special video where I answer this question about Diablo 4. Buy it now, wait, or skip? This is more or less a review of the game as it is in its first few weeks. Things can and will change with the start of seasons, later there are going to be expansions and more, but in this video I'm going to be as thorough and concise as I could be during this preseason period. I'm going to cover story, the world, and gameplay systems. Full disclosure, I was given a copy of the game from the Diablo team, but not before having bought it myself, so I ended up refunding my original purchase. I was not asked to do a review, let alone anything related to them giving me a copy. Like this video if it turns out to be useful, maybe share it with others, and let's begin with the setting and story. Before the game's launch, the team crafted an animated series that went over the long and short of Diablo's history, from the creation of its universe to uncovering the plots of the first 3 games, and it did a fantastic job of setting the mood of what's to come within Sanctuary, the world without happiness. No one's having a good time here. Even after death, spirits are looking for relief. And that's a lot of the vibe when playing through the story, seeking relief in a world that's falling apart, fighting for the hope of a better tomorrow, or any tomorrow. Diablo 4 is the most narratively driven game of the series so far, with many cutscenes in both its main story and side quests, which again brings the franchise to a new level, but are also quite skippable if you're just interested in sticking to the action. For the story alone, the game felt worth buying. It's got heavy beats, exposition where it needs to be, killer cinematics that you've probably seen already, plenty of side content to fill out the state of the world, voice dialogue is almost everywhere, and the acting is great. Some of these characters are absolutely insane. It's got me looking forward to what's next, where I expect the map to expand, new baddies to defeat, and of course, new items to break the game. Diablo 4 is extremely different from its predecessors, and nothing makes it more so than its outdoor world. The slice of Sanctuary we get to explore takes after the World of Warcraft game with a seamless outdoor world that's no longer separated by Acts 1 through 5. You can walk or even hop onto a horse and travel across the map, or use the familiar system of teleporters to get where you need to go. And if you're out on the frontier, you can also teleport to these locations with just a few clicks. The outdoor world has a very MMO kind of feel with its pros and cons. Within this shared space you have players hopping in and out, but don't think of this as an organic or a player-driven world. You're only going to run into a handful of these players at a time in town, or to maybe complete an objective or even take on a world boss, where the system will allow even more players to be present at a time. But the days of the Diablo lobby with creating custom rooms and the like are a dead practice. There is a regular cadence of outdoor events that direct players to certain locations that give a feeling of a living world. At launch, and even at the time of this writing, I found that navigating the world, especially towns, to, well, be kind of an aggravating experience due to lag and probably poor optimization somewhere. I'm sometimes rubber banding. When completing events, sometimes the event would immediately start up again, which I can't complain about too much because, okay, hey, there's more chances of loot. As a regular practice, I have to mount up and then wait for the system to acknowledge that I'm on this horse, and then I can start going anywhere, because if I don't, my horse will otherwise kind of wimp out. Problems are at its worst in the cities. On more than a few occasions, I'd crash while I'm in town because I'm doing too many things at once too quickly right after teleporting in. It crashed my whole system a few times. And even without crashes, city navigation can feel like a chore because there's a bit of distance between the stations that we use for storage, repair, enchanting, and, well, more visits to the storage. When entering separate instances like dungeons, though, we're pretty good. It's not flawless, it's just good. I like to trust that over time stability hiccups will improve. It's not annoying enough to turn me off from playing or suggesting this game to you, but it's definitely annoying enough to point it out. When first playing through the story, it's clearly communicated where you should and should not go with level requirements, but after completing the campaign, the world will then scale to your current level, and there are world tiers that will up the difficulty even higher. Eventually, the power level of your items will be high enough that the scaling doesn't matter, to where you can just sort of run through areas and not have to worry about the rabble clawing away at your feet while you're running towards an objective. Challenges come in many forms, from outdoor content to the world boss, but the bread and butter of Diablo 4 is to run dungeons, lots and lots of dungeons. The variety is pretty huge compared to previous games, with not just different layouts, but biomes, from indoor to outdoor environments, caves to labyrinths to castles, and they come with a differing array of objectives like rescuing prisoners, finding keys to progress further, or fully clearing an area before moving on to the next. So in other words, it's more than just find the exit and kill everything quickly. That may be an unpleasant surprise for players who are hoping for the simplistic, cathartic feeling of mowing down mobs, but trust that there is plenty of that to be done here too. Endgame comes in the form of nightmare dungeons. They start by activating sigils earned from dungeons and activities, or they can be crafted, and they'll tell you to go to a certain dungeon and you're informed of how difficult the dungeon will be by level. It'll note a positive boon for you, and many negative debuffs that you'll experience there. Diablo is very well known for its affixes, and this is going next level. Some may recall Diablo III Reaper of Souls with its greater rifts, and this has a pretty similar vibe. Run dungeons to get these sigils. The harder the dungeon, the harder sigils you can run, and naturally the better loot that you should get out of them, but you can expect very wide rolls, as is what Diablo does. Some may also recall how greater rifts inspired mythic keystone dungeons in World of Warcraft. We've gone full circle, with these affixes being brought over to Diablo IV. Fortunately, as said, you can create new sigils by grinding down unwanted ones and rolling for the difficulty range that you desire. This makes for a lot of replay value, while challenging players with affixes that could be a massive advantage or disadvantage. Currently, the sense of urgency in Nightmare Dungeons comes from needing to clear it with minimal deaths. This is very unlike Diablo III's rifts and greater rifts, where rewards were based on time. This means that there's a hard fail check in Nightmare Dungeons, where if you die too much, you get kicked out and it's game over. Personally, I'm not too fond of this. I sort of prefer a consolation prize, especially considering that some dungeons can feature packs with really punishing affix combos, and other times you get ambushed for an instant death. Comically random deaths is one thing, but for it to kill a dungeon run, that doesn't feel great at all. We're going to talk about gameplay systems now, and I want to disclose that I've been playing as the Necromancer class. It's the brooding, undead, raising bone spear person. The other classes currently include the Barbarian, the Druid, the Sorcerer, and the Rogue. Diablo IV takes after Diablo III and other similar ARPGs that limit the number of active abilities that you can use to the 6 buttons on your hotbar, with 4 keys and 2 mouse buttons. This makes for a limited number of focused hybrid builds that you can create for yourself, but for me at least, it prevents bloat, and it has me emphasize on what few abilities can synergize. At the moment, I'm heavily focused on dealing damage over time with Corpse Explosion, and I rely on my minions to create these corpses. While leveling, you descend down a tree, and you make choices before moving down to the next, before reaching the bottom, where you can choose an ultimate move and a passive. At first this seemed limited, until I discovered the obvious layer of depth that would start me on the road to insanity with these legendary gear affixes. Thanks to Diablo III, we're very used to legendaries and even equipping legendary effects without that gear. In Diablo IV, we can extract legendary effects and transplant them onto an item, turning them into a legendary. This opens up the idea that rare or yellow gear ought to be collected to find close to the ideal stats, and then take a legendary with a good roll on its effect, take that power and imprint it onto this yellow gear. This means lots of collecting legendaries just for the power. You can also build a library of legendary powers that you can use unlimited times to create very basic legendaries. This library is built by completing dungeons for the first time, and like most systems in Diablo IV, this is shared across all characters. Your choice of abilities and passives is one layer of your character's customization. Your choices of legendaries is another layer. Your choice of gear that you imprint your legendaries onto is extremely important too, because there are many stats in Diablo, including a few new ones for Diablo IV. I'll talk about a few. Lucky hits are a special kind of proc, and you can focus on lucky hits to set off special effects like executing low health enemies, activating powerful damage and crowd control bonuses, and more. Overpower is a different sort of proc that you can manipulate by fulfilling special conditions, and it also activates powerful effects. And then there's vulnerability, there's close and distant effectiveness, there's increased damage to healthy and injured enemies, there's armor of course, and hey, resistance is still a thing. With a massive pool of gear, it's going to be a journey, searching or waiting for that perfect piece to drop, or for a unique, basically a legendary with predetermined stats with varying values, or gambling or re-rolling through enchanting. And as a bit of feedback, it would be great if I can track certain gear attributes that I'm hunting for so I can pick up what I want as opposed to scanning through my full inventory later. It sounds pretty lazy of me to ask, but with so many stats to sift through, I personally could use the help. Diablo 4's gameplay and progression starts with leveling, and it gets considerably deeper with gear choices. It gets even deeper still with paragon boards and glyphs, which bring out the defining features of the build that you created. Accessing this feature starts after level 50, and on your way to the max level of 100, you're going to earn a little over 200 points to progress through this paragon board, and you pick up bonuses big and small. Then you progress to the end of the board and onto another one of your choosing. Adding to these boards are a number of glyph slots to boost these bonuses, and these glyphs are powered through the clearing of endgame dungeons, which is, all this is easy. I bet you totally get it right away. Juggling these systems can be a bit overwhelming when soaking it all in once. As someone who has resisted looking at guides beyond at least understanding what some stats mean, the journey of discovering these builds as I play has been super satisfying as I level up bit by bit, discovering new items and getting deeper into these systems. I play through and I ask myself, do I focus on applying debuffs for my minions, or is my character the main source of damage and my minions are just resource generators? Do I go Blood Nova? Do I go Bone Spear? Do I focus on overpower stats? Or do I go Thorns? I really want to try Thorns, but oh man, that's a lot of re-gearing and leveling different glyphs to maybe make that work. Experimentation and trying to find something different from the accepted meta is a big part of the fun for me. Late endgame is a different topic to cover. Rebalancing is happening regularly, and I'd say that after only a few weeks, we can't expect anywhere near the majority of players reaching max level and or challenging the thresholds of what's possible in the game. But I can claim that at the moment these top-end players are, well, forever dissatisfied. They hunger for more. They want the loops between obtaining gear and customizing their stats to be a little bit easier. Some classes have clear advantages over others in Nightmare Dungeons and more. But thankfully, the dev team has been very responsive and are testing the waters to see how much change is too much or too little, too early or too late. Recently, they announced some rebalance and quality of life improvements to make the endgame grind feel more smooth, improve inventory management, and more. Diablo 4 is taking after Diablo 3 with seasons, which as far as we know are going to be quarter-long periods where players create new characters and push as high as they can go, all the while probably earning special rewards and cosmetics particular to the season. This sort of cadence sets the expectation of when major updates will happen with the game, from rebalancing to maybe a new class, new expansions, questlines, items, cosmetics, and more. Today, Diablo 4 is a buy-to-play game, and it's not cheap. It's $70 here in US markets. Never mind the inflation, the current generation standard or whatever, that's a pretty high price. We can expect the occasional large-scale expansions to the game to also come at a premium, and tacked on with Seasons is a seasonal reward track offering cosmetics for your efforts with seasonal characters, or you can pay to progress through the track and get the cosmetics too. I get the sentiment behind having multiple layers of monetizing. On the other hand, we could also look back at how infrequent updates were for the earlier Diablo games, celebrated as they may be. It's clear that Diablo 4 wants to be the kind of game with sustained updates, and that's not going to come from new sales or expansion releases, but hey, that's a pretty cool transmog, maybe I'll pick it up. It is a relief that seasonal content is free, and the season pass tracks are going to be cosmetic. So buy, wait, or skip. I think Diablo 4 is a must-buy. It's fun, it's got a great story, it delivers on what Diablo and these kinds of games are, of power fantasy. It's a practice in catharsis after a long day and you want to spend an hour or so listening to demons explode and raising the corpses of spirits to do your bidding because, yeah, sure, why not? But it's also expensive at the moment, and it's a little bit unstable on both the client and server side. It's also improving every day, and I can tell because I've been playing every day. I'm firmly between buy and wait, so I guess think of this as an overall 4 out of 5 score. If you got the extra cash, this is worth picking up, so get out there and crack some skulls. If nothing else though, wait till it's on sale. For me, Diablo 4 is not an MMO with things to miss out on, and I'm not here to collect pretty appearances from the shop. I'm here for corpse exploding. But that's my take, leave a like, and have a great day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.